All right, well, hey everyone, everybody on the stream and everybody checking out this recording later. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm Josh, Coding It Wrong online. We're going to do some test-driven development in React Native. So let's talk about this for a little bit. Test-driven development, I'm pretty obsessed about it. Anybody who knows me knows that. It's a really, really cool flow. And as I've been working on how to get this flow working in React Native, I wanted to share it with some of y'all, with anybody who wants to join in. Hey Judy on the chat, thanks for saying hello. I am live on the chat, so please let me know your questions, comments, feedback. I'm not the most experienced React Native person in the world, so let me know if I'm doing something wrong or there's something I can improve, and certainly if I get stuck. And let me know about logistical stuff too, if the sound has a problem, something like that. All right, so let's take a look at some links here related to test-driven development. I'm going to give folks a minute to join in if they want to, so just a little overview stuff here first. I've created a website called react-native-testing.io, and this is sort of a one-stop shop that I'm trying to set up for testing information for React Native because I had trouble finding it. So we're going to be looking through all the basic setup information on this site, and that's going to be the main focus for today. We're going to set up, we're going to work with Jest, the built-in testing tool for new React Native apps. We're going to work with Enzyme, which is a great tool for testing components, and Detox, a tool for end-to-end testing. We're going to get them all working in the same app so that we're all set to go together, so you can run the code locally if you want, or use these tools in your own apps. We're going to be working in a repo called React Native TDD live stream. This and all the other links I'm going to be showing you are linked in the stream notes. So just look down on the page, you can see them, and hit me up on the chat or somewhere else if something's not coming up. But this is the repo where this code is going to live. You could pull it down right now if you want to. And each week as I do a live stream, I'm going to be pushing up the changes in a PR, so you can comment there, ask questions, give feedback. I am going to be streaming Fridays at 2 p.m. That's the plan for right now. So check me out on Twitter or on Twitch for updates in the news if that schedule changes at all, but that's the intent. All right, I don't think we have any other introductory content, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be talking some about the different options, the different tools that I use as we go through as well. One other note, I've created a simple shell script called nativeup that automates some of this project setup for you. I haven't yet been able to integrate it with Ignite. I might do that, or maybe one of you wants to do that. But nativeup is just a simple bash script I created that's going to set up your project with eslint, Enzyme, and Detox. So I'm actually going to be pulling some sample code from here as well. All of this code ultimately comes from the setup docs from Enzyme and Detox. But I kind of liked having it all in one place in the setup script and in react-native-testing.io. All right, so nativeup is an option if you want to spin up a new project yourself. So today we're going to be building the app in React Native CLI. So you might have used something else. If you go to the React Native Quick Start page, you're going to be using a tool called Create React Native App. There's also Expo is a very common tool, a great platform for working exclusively in JavaScript and quick prototyping and getting your app released as an MVP quickly and over-the-air updates and everything like that. So Expo and Create React Native App are both really great tools. If you ever need to get into the native code, though, that's when you're going to want to go with the different option called Building Projects with Native Code. So if you choose this on the React Native docs, you'll see a different tool to be installed called React Native CLI. And so when you create a project with React Native CLI, there's actually going to be a real iOS and a real Android project created inside of it. So that's going to give you the access to do a few different things like install, if you want to write your own native code, you can do that. If you want to install add-ons that use new Swift code, new Android code, you can do that as well. And it doesn't preclude over-the-air updates for JavaScript code, but it just gives the option when you need to add new native code, you can do that and do a new App Store build and stuff like that. The reason I'm using React Native CLI for this demo is that specifically for Detox, the end-to-end testing tool, it's easiest to set up with React Native CLI. Now I've seen documentation they have on their site that you can use it with Expo as well. I gave it a try and I wasn't able to get it working yet. So if you've gotten Detox working with Expo, let me know. Maybe I can get that working as well. But for now, React Native CLI is going to be the most idiomatic, usual way to use Detox. And all the other tools work just fine in there. Another thing, I've recently switched over to using Yarn for all my package management. So I wanted to mention that because it is a little bit less common. So instead of using the npm command line tool, I use the yarn command line tool. And so that's an extra installation step. So I hesitated to ask people to do that, but there's just a number of things that are just simpler about yarn. The commands to add packages are more in line with what I expect. The way it uses the lock file makes more sense to me, so the lock file is not going to be automatically updated when you run a command. And then also for running yarn scripts, you'll see for running npm scripts, it's just a little bit more concise. So I'm using yarn. If you haven't seen it before, you can see what it's like. But if you're familiar with npm, you'll know all the equivalent command packages, commands to use, and that'll all be very familiar with you. So that's my point about yarn. All right, so let's take a look at our project. So the reason that I've created this project in advance is I wanted to pre-install the packages because, as you know, npm installing and yarn installing can take a little while. So I've pre-installed all the packages we're going to need in a series of steps here for Enzyme, Detox, and eslint. I'll show you the commands for those, but those are all in there and ready to go. So let's see, but before even we do that, we can see that built into React Native, when you create a new project with react-native-cli, and run this command, I'll show you on the screen here real quick. When you run React Native init to create a new project, you're going to get Jest as a testing framework by default. So it's set up as an npm script that it just runs Jest, and you're good to go. It's going to run those test files for you. Jest is a great choice for a lot of reasons. It's very popular. It's up and coming as a test runner. And one of the nice things, it has everything built in for you. It's got the test runner, the assertion library, so you don't need to assemble several different packages. So that's really nice. There's no reason for us not to stick with Jest going forward, so we're going to use that for our unit test, for our test of standalone functions. So next, let's talk about Enzyme. Enzyme is a component testing library, and so let's go through the steps to get it installed, get it set up, and run a little smoke test to show it in action. I'm just going to do git show here for my git history to show the commands I run, because I put it in the commentary there. So I ran yarn add -d, so this means to save it as a dev dependency, just like save dev with npm. And I installed 3 packages: Enzyme itself, Enzyme adapter React 16, and the Enzyme docs. I'll go into this, of course, but Enzyme has a different adapter for each version of React. We're using React 16, of course, as you might expect, and so we use that version. One other package, this package is called Johnny React Native Mock. And so this allows Enzyme to work with React Native, even though it's not running on a device with access to Android or iOS APIs. It allows it to still render JSX and things like that. One quick note I just remembered. I wanted to mention that in my project right here, I'm actually using the previous version of React Native. So when I initialized it, here's the command, React Native init, gave it a name, and I specified version 0.55.4. And the reason is 0.56 came out just recently. It's a major upgrade to Babel 7, which is really great. There's so many cool features working in Babel that are coming soon. I've gotten to play with some of those on a professional development investment week, so it's really neat. But I was just getting some errors working with React Native 56 that I wasn't experienced enough to resolve. So I thought for our testing purposes, version 55 is going to work out best. And those of you, like maybe some of you listening, that know Babel and know React Native more intimately, you can help the team resolve some of the Babel errors that might come up in version 56. And maybe on the stream we'll even be able to update to version 56 in the weeks to come or something. But if you're following along, you may want to initialize to version 0.55.4 as well. Alright, so let's go back to Enzyme. So if you run this command, yarn add d, with these 3 packages, they'll be added for you and installed and good to go. And then we'll kind of go from here to do the next steps of setup that we need to do. Let me just pull up my cheating notes in front of me here. So actually, let's pull them up over here on React Native testing. That'll be good. So if you go on the website to component test, setting up Enzyme, that's where I put my notes. And you can read them. I will swing them over here to this other monitor just to keep me productive and keep you stuff on the screen. So one thing we need to do, we need to create a configuration file that's actually going to configure Enzyme for us. So let's just create a folder. Let's say we'll put them in a folder called tests. Makes sense. Let's create a new file called setup. And in this file, I'm just going to copy and paste this contents over because it's boilerplate, it's straight out of the Enzyme docs. We import Enzyme itself, we import the adapter from that package, and then we just configure Enzyme to use that adapter. So we set up Enzyme to use React 16. That's all nice and simple. To tell Jest to run this setup file at the start, we just need to paste something in here. We just say, in addition to Jest with a preset React Native, which is created for us when we create our project, we're going to create some setup files here. So we say to Jest, putting in setup file, this is the setup file to run whenever we're running our tests. So we specify the setup file there and we're good to go. HTTP I see the testing is cheating. That's true. You might even say that development without testing is developing on hard mode. And that can be fun, but it can be helpful to go the other approach as well, for sure. And I see your silly, sarcastic face. Thank you. Your tone will fit just well with mine. That's great. All right, so this should be running our setup file for us with Jest to be able to use Enzyme. I'm going to go ahead and set up one other thing in here, because I'm going to forget later if I don't do it now. So out of the box, Jest is set up to just run without any command line arguments. So it'll run any test file it'll find. That's fine, but when we get Detox set up, we wanted the Detox runner to work a little bit differently. So let's specify for Jest where to find the files it should do. So we'll do test/star/star.spec.js. And what this means is we want to look in subfolders of tests for our test file. I'm saying things all out of order, so let me explain why I would have done that. I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it components, and so our component tests are going to go in there. And so that's that or any other subfolder I create. I'm probably going to have another folder just for testing individual functions or objects or things like that, things that aren't React specific, but they'll all live under there. And so what this is going to do is to prevent our Jest test runs from running Detox tests, because we want to run those separately. End-to-end tests, Detox tests are a lot slower, so we want to be able to just run the unit tests and the component tests that are quick for quick turnaround very quickly. I see Jenny asks if anyone else's video keeps stopping. Let me check and see what Twitch is saying about my bandwidth. Okay, HTTPS says not on my end, so thanks for that. The bandwidth coming through is showing okay here. So Jetty, sorry about that if that video keeps stopping. There will be a recording, and so if it's making it through to Twitch just fine, you'll be able to check it out. Alright, HTTPS says maybe the bit rate is too high. I will troubleshoot that afterwards, and maybe for my next recording we can get that working a little bit better. So thanks for the help, y'all, and thanks for going. So Jetty, we should be able to get you that recording afterwards for anything you might have missed. Appreciate it, y'all. Alright, so let's go back to putting in the code. Next I want to create a smoke test. And smoke test is just a general term for just kind of confirming that things are working. In our case, we don't even have really any application code to test yet, but I just want to confirm even that the enzyme is working. So I'm going to create a file called smoke.spec.js. And this I'm actually going to type in. Alright, so in our test here, we're going to import React as usual in a file. And now we're going to import some React Native components. We're just going to create a text component. So that's all we need for right now. So now we're going to import a function from Enzyme called shallow. So I haven't used Enzyme extensively for React web apps. If you have, you may be familiar with Enzyme's shallow and mount functions. Those are the difference between just rendering your custom component and only at that level, or going all the way levels deep to render out all the child components and grandchild components and things like that. So there's lots of pros and cons to them. My understanding on React Native is that shallow is really our only option. And that's alright, because it's kind of a testing approach I prefer anyways. With shallow testing, that's what we're going to use here. So let's go ahead and start writing our test. We're going to say describe text. So we're going to test the text component now. Of course, this is totally unrealistic. For your application code, you don't need to test React Native components unless you're just trying to figure out how they work. But this is, again, just to confirm that we can actually get Enzyme working and to show you what it looks like. So we're going to say that the text component, it renders text. If you haven't done Jest testing or Mocha testing before, in a future screencast, we're going to talk a lot more about describe and it and how they work. But for now, just kind of roll with it. So for the wrapper, create a wrapper. We can say we want to shallow render some JSX here. And so we're going to just create our text component. We're going to say hello world. Okay, so we will have now rendered this JSX into this wrapper object that Enzyme creates for us, and now we can set an expectation on it. We can say expect wrapper.text to equal hello world. So we just want to confirm that the text inside of this component is in fact hello world. So let's try to run this. Let's see if I set it up right. We can do yarn test. And again, if you're doing npm, you could just do npm run test. I believe that should work, but yarn is a bit more concise. Yarn test. Let's see if I got it. You can see that it's run test with our command line argument as we specified. It's taking a few seconds to spin up here on this end. It's attempting to run our smoke test. JavaScript takes a little while to spin up on my computer. It's a pretty new MacBook. Maybe it's all that switching back to Ruby that I do. All right, cool. We see that the test is passed. So it confirmed that it's rendered the text. And if we want, we can actually confirm that it fails if it's wrong. So let's say goodbye world. If we change the test to that, let's see if it spins up a bit faster this time. That seems a little faster. Yeah, there we go. We get a failing test. And back here, and Jest has given us a nice clean error output. We expected to get goodbye world, but we actually got hello world. So that's great. So we've got failing and passing Enzyme tests, so Enzyme is working for us. And so Enzyme is going to allow us to test our components one by one so that we can design them individually and make sure they're each working individually. So I think that's it for Enzyme. Next, we're going to set up Detox for our end-to-end tests. So if Enzyme tests individual components, Detox tests the whole application all together. So just like I said before, I've already installed the Detox dependencies. I think there's just one. So let's see here. Yep, yarn add -d detox. So there's just one Detox dependency to install within the app, but there's a few more to do globally. So let me just drag the React Native testing screen back over here. Under end-to-end testing, setting up Detox. Yeah, so I kind of put a little concise version of what's in the Detox docs itself. You got to install a brew, you got to install this Apple Simutils, and then you have to globally add the Detox command line tools. So I haven't actually done any testing on Windows. So this is an assumption that I have that you're on Mac. It's unfortunate if you're a Windows user that that's the assumption these days. But so that's my experience. So if you're on Windows and you're trying to do testing like this, give these tools a try, check out Enzyme and Detox's docs, and correspond with me, correspond with the maintainers of the tools as well to let us know how things work on Windows, and we'll try to get things working for you. Because I want React Native testing to be an all-in-one place, I'd love to add documentation there on what you need to do to get things going on Windows. Cool, just checking the chat here. People are chiming in on their connections, and folks are asking about specific coding problems they have. Thanks for the helpfulness there. I'll also share some Discord channels when we're done, places that you can chat with me or others. Cool, so get things installed with Detox, including this global command, because you're going to need that. Actually, you're going to need it next is what you're going to need to do. So the next step is to actually run the Detox command, the global Detox command. You're going to run it init within your project. Actually, I'm going to do a commit first, because I'm actually going to be pushing this up. So here's our changes here, and I'm going to do a commit that says configure enzyme. Cool, we're coding this together, so we're making commits. So next, Detox init, and we want to specify Detox was built with another testing library, Mocha, as the default in the past. Mocha is really great. I've only recently switched over to using Jest for this project. I think either Enzyme or Detox, I guess it was probably Enzyme, worked better for me in Jest than in Mocha. But there's a bunch of other benefits to Jest as well. So when we're initializing Detox and we want to connect it to Jest, we need to specify that Jest is the tool we're using. When we run this, it's going to run very quickly. Create some files for us. You see that it's created an end-to-end test folder, and I think it's made a change in our package JSON as well. Yeah, so it's created a Detox testing section and created a test runner config as well to say that Jest is the test runner. So next we want to add a bunch of config into here. You can get this out of the Detox docs or out of react-native-testing.io, so I'm just going to paste it over and get it all formatted nicely. Yeah, all right. So here we're setting up a build configuration for what Jest should be using to do a certain build. It shows the paths to iOS and where stuff is and what simulator to use. And one thing you're going to need to do is to change the name of your app. So the code that I copied over from react-native-testing.io says myappname.app. You can just select all instances of that and replace it with your app name. React-native TDD. And of course, I renamed the folder that my code was in and the repo that is up on GitHub. But the name that matters is what you initially created your project to do, because that's the name of the files that Xcode is going to build and things like that. One other note, I've been doing my testing on iPhone. I know the Detox, I didn't get a chance to check with the Detox team, but it seems like Android testing is just about there or fully there for Detox. So I should really try it one of these weeks. The live stream will give me a good opportunity to do that. When I'm doing my test-driven development, I'm less concerned at that time about all the cross-platform testing, and certainly not about testing on different iOS or Android devices. Really what I'm concerned about is just to drive out the behavior of my application from an end user's perspective. So at the test driving phase, I'm just focused on one device at a time, but afterwards I might very well use those end-to-end tests to test my app on multiple platforms. And so that's something that would be really great for us to try in a future week. But that's why I'm just kind of set up iPhone and I'm good to go with that. So we've set up Detox to connect to our app at our built URL here. This is the part that if you're using Expo is going to get a bit more complex because you need to copy down and point to it. You know, usually in Expo you don't have an app built or an Xcode project, and so that stuff's not available to you. So you want to follow those Detox Expo specific documents there to get that working. Alright, so now we want to set up a smoke test as well for Detox. So it creates a test for us that gives us examples of the kind of things you can test in Detox. And of course, using Jest, it's using the typical describe and its as well as a before each. There's a little bit of a before each block here that sets up your device and reloads React Native on it, so that's really nice. But these tests won't actually pass for our default Hello World application that's created for us. So I'm just gonna, let's delete out these tests and rewrite something new in here that's gonna work. So we have our welcome screen. The simulator is actually up and running here. I've got it running already. We've got our typical welcome to React Native screen that comes up when we use React Native CLI. So we just want to test something to make sure the Detox is working. So let's say it should show the welcome message. It's nice that you're using the same test runner Jest in your component and end-to-end tests, but the APIs you have available are a bit different. Cool, I see that Juddy said that if you use Ignite, that Juddy has created a plugin that'll add Detox to your project. That is really cool. I'm definitely going to check that out, and I'll post it on React Native testing one way or the other if I can get it working. And yeah, if anyone has done any Ignite setup to get Enzyme working as well, I love to have both the component and end-to-end testing working there. So this is great that all these things, I think the way plugins work in Ignite, in fact, is that you combine them. So you can have a plugin for Detox, probably there's one for Enzyme as well. So I'm definitely going to be checking those out. Maybe I'll share about those in a future week. This is great. Getting the React Native testing community together, it's awesome. Alright, so we're showing the welcome message. So, and one thing that's really cool about Detox is it uses JavaScript's async await. So you want to mark your function as async, and for this command we want to do await. If you haven't used async and await, I'll find a link to that and share that in the show notes afterwards. Let me make a note for myself so I don't forget. It's going to be in all caps so I don't miss it. Async await is really nice for asynchronous things, and it's really cool that Detox is built in async await mode because UI tests are inherently asynchronous. So that is using the new standard JavaScript paradigm to represent that. So what we're going to do here, and actually we write await around our even running our expectation here, and we're going to say we want to get an element out of the app. So now we need to decide, and you can look at Detox's docs, and we'll do that more in the future for the different ways you can retrieve elements. But just for now, without getting into all the pros and cons, I'm going to say the way I'm going to retrieve this is by ID, and I'm going to say the ID is welcome. So how do you set up an ID? So this is actually an accessibility ID, and the way you would do this is you go into your component, and for like your text here, or actually really this one here, this is the welcome text that I'm going to check for. You can just pass an argument that says test ID equals welcome. I'm not actually sure how this works under the hood. I'm not totally sure if React Native will automatically render stuff like test ID out, or if Detox is actually looking at the render tree of the virtual DOM tree to see that attribute there. But what I do know is you can drop test ID on just about any of these components, and this gives you an accessibility ID that shows up over here. I guess there is some hook into the native code because this does show up at the native layer. So Detox is actually running against your app that's running in the simulator, and so it's hitting the actual UIKit views. And so adding test ID here actually does create the accessibility ID on the UIKit element. If you ever worked in native iOS development, you may know that accessibility ID is a property on there. So, test ID, I should find out about that to know more. Thank you for the accountability for me to learn better. But what I do know is that specifying test ID here will allow us to test for it here in our detox test. So, we retrieve the element by ID welcome, and then we can just say we expect it to be visible. You can probably check the contents of it as well, but here I just want to check that that element is visible. And once we get that working, we'll run and we'll get it to break as well. Now, to run Detox, to run Enzyme Jest test, you did not need your React Native packager running, your Metro bundler. For Detox, you will, because your app actually needs to be running. So I've actually already started it, with your typical React Native start. If you haven't run across this before, maybe Expo doesn't use it, or maybe you've just let the run iOS command get it running for you, you can actually run React Native start in your own terminal, and that way you just get control of where the bundler runs. I've put it in one of my terminals in code here, and that way I can hide it when I don't need it, but I can reference it when I do need it. So now to run the tests, instead of running an npm or yarn command, you can just run detox test. You can configure that as an npm script as well, to do things in the most typical detox way, I'm going to do that. It should be opening up one of my simulators here. I actually have both running, but I think iPhone 8 is the simulator we configured, and this is going to take a little bit longer to kick off our app. So first it's going to show that it's found our spec and it's got things going, and now you see a little bit of feedback here. It's searching for a device matching iPhone 8. It's reinstalling the iOS bundle itself, the iOS application, and you can see it over here on the simulator coming up. It's going to take just a second. Cool, the app comes up, and then now we see that the test is passed, and we get some nice output. It should show the welcome message. So again, like before, I'm not satisfied with things being green. I'm a test-driven developer. I want things to be red. We're not test driving now, but I got to see that red to know that the test is really working. So welcome, we'll just get the wrong ID on there, and we'll rerun detox test, and we'll see what happens here, and we'll make sure that detox will actually fail when something is not coming up the way we expect. It reruns. It's going to be reinstalling the app again. I'll show you one little tip about Detox again in just a moment here too. Okay, we get a long error, and we actually need to scroll up here on my small screen to see it. We see that a test has failed, and then up here it says should show the welcome message test, and then up here a bit further, interaction cannot continue because the desired element was not found. And even further up, we get a big chunk of element matcher here. So unfortunately, this is a bit complex. It's a bit hard to parse. This is something the Detox team is working on. But if we drill in here, we can see, okay, it was looking for the element matcher accessibility ID as welcome, and that was not found. So cool. So we got it to successfully fail. So yeah, one other tip, if you pass a detox test-r, it's not going to reinstall the iOS app. It's just going to rerun the test from scratch. So this is good for a quick turnaround time. But as you might imagine, for something stateful like this, you can run into trouble. So if detox test R is doing something you don't expect, things have gotten out of sync, or you've made like bigger changes to your app and things aren't passing, it's safest to rerun detox test. But having quick turnaround time for test-driven development in particular is really important, because we're going to be running tests and then writing app code, and then running tests and then writing app code. So detox test R can be quicker for us. You can see that the test is rerun and it's passed. I'm going to rerun it real quick just so we can see how fast it is. Yep, it found the device, and you see it didn't reinstall it. It just rebooted the iOS app there and got it going. So that's good to go. Cool. All right, so our detox test is up and running. That's very exciting. Let's commit this code. I'm going to do a patch test here. This is my Git shortcuts. Maybe we can do those in like a frequent questions week some other week. But I'm just going to review our changes. We added that test ID. We added a bunch of configuration. We just pasted in to our package.json. And then also our E2E folder was created for us. You'll notice there's a few other files in there, a config file and an init.js that were configured for us. So that's nice that we didn't need to create that. So we'll commit this, configure detox. So there's one more thing that I want to handle in the stream, and that's setting up eslint. So if you've been a JavaScript developer for any amount of time, you've probably used eslint or some alternative. It's a code linter, which basically checks the style of your code, and especially important in JavaScript, it checks for common errors that might bite you. So in a sense, this is another kind of testing because it's keeping you safe from problems. I just feel like eslint or something like it is super essential to prevent you from getting bit by JavaScript's rough edges. So because of the way JavaScript works, older syntax is not deprecated because we don't want to break the web for when JavaScript runs on the web. But when we're writing new code, we don't want to write things in a way that's going to be risky and confusing to other developers. So eslint is super essential. So let's see what I needed to do to get it configured. I did add the dependencies in the past, as I mentioned. So this one, there's a number of them. So you don't need to install all of these yourself. If you just install eslint and run an init command, eslint actually has nice tooling that'll walk you through a setup for you for eslint in particular. And there's Airbnb's eslint configuration in particular has some React-specific setup, so that's really nice. And that's what I used at first personally, was Airbnb's React setup. But here we're going to do, this is my live stream, so we're going to do my coding style on here. So I've actually created a plugin called eslint-config-codingitwrong. This is one of the more ironic uses of my name for eslint to be confirming that you are coding it wrong in your code. The reason I created this is that, and maybe we'll look at this in a future week as well, I wanted to get a linter that gave me all the safety I wanted, but also gave me flexibility to refactor, to make small, tiny changes to my code. And that's going to be important in test-driven development as well. So we're going to set things up with the coding it wrong config. So let's see what else is in here. We have a Detox plugin and a Jest plugin that are going to help us know about those kind of endpoints, those kind of globals, so that we're not going to get errors for those. Import and JSX and React are just going to let us use the typical features you're going to use in React and React Native development. So we add all of these. Oh, and Babel ESLint, of course, is going to make ESLint aware of Babel, the transpiler that you are probably using. I'm sure, well, you're definitely using it in React Native and probably elsewhere as well. That lets us use the new, latest, and greatest ES features, just like async await that we were just looking at. So Babel ESLint is required for ESLint to be aware of that. So again, you don't need to think too much or know too much about all these things. You just need these packages installed. So next, I'm going to look at my code over on my cheat screen monitor here to see the config that I use for my eslint RC. Again, if you use eslint init, it'll set this up for you, and then you can just add things in as you go. I'm going to create the eslint RC at the root of the project, and I'm going to see if I can learn how to do that in Visual Studio Code. You know, that would be good to mention Visual Studio Code real quick. I just saw a discussion on react-native-cli just a moment ago, actually, about what editor folks use. Personally, I've been using Visual Studio Code for all my JavaScript code recently because it has so much built in. Especially doing a tutorial like this, there's not a lot of plugins you need to add. It has JavaScript syntax highlighting built in. It has knowledge of JSX built in. And that's really nice. We're just going to add one quick plugin for eslint a little bit later. But yeah, Visual Studio Code is great. I highly recommend it. So I'm going to create my eslint RC file. I like to do this in JavaScript because then it's JavaScript and nice and flexible. You can add comments if you want to. So let's just add module exports here. Again, this is all in the eslint docs. So what plugins do we want? Extends. We want to extend. Actually, rather first we're extending some eslint configs. Extend the plugin React recommended. So we want all the recommended React checking. And then on top of that, we want to add coding it wrong. Confirm that we are coding it wrong. So that's my preset with a bunch of configs. You can check in the GitHub repo, of course, to see what the configs are. And you can customize your own or use Airbnb's if you don't want to be as nonconformist as me. We need to specify a parser. We need to specify plugins. And so this is where I specify the Detox and Jest plugin. But that is not enough. We also need, once those plugins are added in, we also need to say, we need to specify the environment we're running in. Detox true, Jest globals true. And these specific configs you can find in the readmes for these plugins. The way I found the plugins was I just Googled on, when I'm getting an error that a certain thing in Detox or a certain thing in Jest wasn't found, I just Googled, like, how do you fix this? And these plugins came up with descriptions about how to fix them. These plugins will give eslint other knowledge about Detox and Jest and how they work. But right here, we're just saying we have the Detox and Jest globals available, globals like describe and before each and things like that. So this just lets eslint know about those. And then one more rule. Here's where we start to get into controversy land. So I am a dynamic language person, and I have not yet found the need for prop types. If you're on a huge React Native app, I'm sure you have, and that's totally fine. I'm turning them off for now. So that's what we're doing. Please give me feedback if you think I'm insane for turning off prop types in React. Maybe I'll run into some really frustrating stuff in the future. But one thing I found is that when you have tests and types aren't totally interchangeable. They both provide overlapping benefits, and you can benefit from both. But I like to start with the coverage that tests give me and only switch to kind of type checking when it's necessary, when I find that it's tedious or that to test them, or that tests just aren't giving me the coverage I need. So we're going to try with prop types off the start. All right, this is our eslint configuration, and so now we want to set up an npm script to run eslint. I'm going to check on my cheat monitor for how I configure that in nativeup. In the README. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'm going to copy that over. So when we run the lint command, we want to run eslint. And what do we want to lint? Okay, all the JavaScript in the root, because I want to lint my, my JavaScript index.js, lint my JavaScript config files. That's great. I want all my JavaScript to look perfect, so that's great. Lint all the JavaScript files into the E2E directory, and lint everything under my test directory. One quick side note on that. An end-to-end test is a kind of test. So I would actually love to have that live under my test directory. I haven't played around with that yet. This is the default place that Detox puts the tests, and especially when you're getting started, it can be good to stick with the defaults of whatever tools you're using. Maybe in a future week, we'll play with moving this into the test folder. It could be super trivial. But I'd love for all my tests to live under the test directory, but we're going to leave the Detox test at E2E for now. So this will lint all of our files. I'm sure there's some errors. I believe I saw those before with some of the default generating files. I think actually Visual Studio Code is telling me about an error over here. So let's try it. Yarn lint. Let's lint our app. It's going to run eslint over it all. Get some errors. Keyword import is reserved. And of course, as often happens with live stuff, an error comes up that I have not run across before in my own experimentation. And so it seems like something is not set up right with this. Babel eslint. Interesting. Let's look back over my instructions here. If you are on the live stream and you can tell what I'm doing wrong, let me know. This seems like ES6-ish type stuff that it should know about, but it just doesn't know about yet. Lint RC, yeah. True, types off. This is very interesting. Well, we may not actually be able to get linting working now. I may need to look into this offline. Cool. Well, let's proceed ahead, and maybe I will have a burst of insight as we go along a little bit later. Yeah, there we go. Cool. We shall see. All right. So, assuming we have linting set up, let's commit that. Set up linting. Work in progress. You guys are here for the real deal. Well, cool. So we've got linting set up. We've got Jest. We've got Enzyme. We've got Detox working for our app. So this is all really great. Yeah, I guess the last thing to show is just to show the Visual Studio Code eslint extension. It's really easy to do. Just pop over to the extensions bar here, search for eslint. It's going to come up, and then if you don't have it installed yet, you'll be able to click install, and you'll be good to go. And this is why you'll get the real-time feedback in your app. So this is something that I rely on. This is usually where I see lint errors happen is as I'm typing, and you'll see those on the future streams and stuff like that. So when you see those those lint errors as you go through here, you can just correct your code as you go to get things nice and consistent. Cool, well I think that's just about it. We've got the app running. I haven't even run the app in non-test mode, so let's actually do that to confirm that's working. React Native, and just so you can see it if you're used to working in Expo. React Native run iOS. It's going to take a minute to get going, of course, as you're used to, but not too long. And I'll just talk in terms of wrap-up as this goes. So today we set up our project. We got all on the same page in terms of tooling. We got Jest, Enzyme, Detox, and eslint almost working. I'll do that offline. And those are set to go. I'm going to push up this PR so you can take a look and comment on it. And you'll be able to see it in the future as well. I'll post it in the notes for the episodes that are recorded. The recording of this episode will show up on Twitch temporarily. I think they post it temporarily and permanently on my YouTube channel, which I'll put in the show notes. So now we're good to go. So when you have all these tools, you're actually set. Like, you can read their docs, you can do testing. You don't really need to learn about test-driven development from me. If you want to do a test after workflow, then it's fine. Like, you can do it. Write your code, write your test afterwards. You'll get nice coverage. That'll be good. Cool. And so, so what's the benefit of TDD? The benefit is that you're still going to run across a number of questions as you're writing tests. And I've seen this in places that I've worked where we take a test after approach. How many tests should I write? How many end-to-end tests? How many component tests? How should I decide on the balance? How do I make it so that my tests are not overly coupled to my app? One thing that's a nightmare is when you need to make one small change to a piece of production code, but 10 tests break at the time, and so you need to do all the updates to them. It makes your changes 10 times as expensive, and so that's really problematic with testing. So I believe that test-driven development, in particular end-to-end test-driven development, in a style that I've learned about through books that I'll share about, can be really helpful with that. It helps you cover all of your code with tests, but just enough tests to drive out the behavior and to loosely couple to them. I should share the book that's related to this as well. That would be really helpful. So, zoom. The book is called Growing Object-Oriented Software Guided by Tests. This is a classic book on testing. This is some random website. I'll pull up Amazon instead. This is a classic book on test-driven development, and specifically this outside-in testing approach that we're going to be using. This is an approach where we write the end-to-end test first, and then we step down to lower-level tests, component tests, and unit tests. So this book is awesome. It's about 10 years old now. It's for Java GUI development, so it may not be as familiar to you unless you're an Android native developer, but all the principles totally apply. And so we're going to be walking through it in a React Native context, but if you ever want to go back to the source and dive more into the theory behind things, check out this book. It's really good. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be, oh, now we got some sharing my live stream here. Good times. That's what we're going to do in future weeks. We're going to test drive out an application. So the application we're going to be doing is called Opinion 8, ATE. And this is going to be an app for tracking dishes you eat at different restaurants and how you rate them. I find this going to Asian restaurants and sushi in particular. I can never keep track of the names of different sushi rolls. And so I want to rate ones I've had before that are great or okay or terrible. So we're going to make an app called Opinion 8 to do so. And we're just going to see where it goes. We're going to build in the basic functionality to start out. We're definitely going to get to the point where we're integrating with an external web service to save the data, and we're going to show how you can fake out the external web service connections there to make your tests reliable. And we'll see where else it goes. Maybe we'll put some mapping functionality in, some more advanced authentication. You guys can help me decide where we want to take this. So I'd really appreciate your input and feedback as we go. And that's about it. So until next time, I encourage you to check out, this is my personal stuff. Where is, I should move this, but yeah, there we go, there's my window. So until next time, what I'd recommend you do, check out React Native Testing IO for the stuff I've written up about how to set up your testing, and certainly if you have any questions, go in there, or connect to me personally. Check out the repo, React Native TDD livestream. The pull request for these changes we made will be up there soon, and I'll leave it over the weekend, maybe until Monday or Tuesday. And of course, the pull request will still be there afterwards where you can comment. Any comments or questions or improvements you suggest, put it in there. If you want to automate some of this setup, use nativeup, give it a try. Again, in the live stream show notes, links to all these resources are there, so you can dive more into Detox or Enzyme. That would be another great thing to do. I'd encourage you to add those tools to your production React Native application. Or your hobby one, even if it's just on a branch, even if you don't merge it down to master, and give them a try. See what it's like to end-to-end test your current app or components within your current app, just to get used to what they have. I'll be back in a week, next Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then we're going to test drive out our first feature. I'm really excited. Thanks all for joining in. I appreciated the chatter. I see a few folks have just said hello all at once. So Amigos, Wrath, Obsidian Talon, thank you for saying hello. I appreciate everyone who joined in the stream and everyone who checks out the recording afterwards. This is really fun. I love React Native, I love testing, and I love to be able to interact with y'all on it. So give all these things a try, and I'll catch you next week. And also Twitter, that's the other thing. Check in the show notes. I'm on Twitter all the time, so you can reach me on Twitch chat or on Twitter with any questions you have. The last thing I'll say is that another great place to chat about React Native is React Deflux. It's a Discord channel for React and React Native. So hit me up on there in the React Native channel or in the testing channel, or direct message me. I probably need to change my screen name in there. I think it might be Josh Justice now. Maybe I'll change it to Coding It Wrong. But hit me up in any of those places. I love to chat with folks through the week. Questions you have or things you've run across, tips you've run across about React Native testing. And let's build a great resource about testing and TDD together. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining in on the stream, and we'll catch you next time. As soon as I figure out how to go back to a slide. See ya.